Hi, and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer. All week, we are going to be talking about economic development, and I'm very excited for that. But we're going to start off a little bit different with today's show. So while we are focusing a little bit on economic development, we're also going to look at technology, right? And every city, every state, especially this day and age, needs to focus on technology. We have areas that have 5G, we have areas that have 4G, we have areas that have 0G. I have T-Mobile, and some days I can't even get a phone call in my own house. So these guys from Crown Castle have joined us to talk a little bit about some of the technological aspects of soft cells, and we'll get into what that means and what that is. But I have with me Scott Harry. He is the government relations manager for the Rocky Mountain region.
That's right.
And that's Colorado and Utah specifically, though Colorado's better. I'm just going to say it. And we also have with us Dan Schweizer. He is the government relations director for the West 13 states. And so welcome, guys. Thank you
Thanks
for joining me.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you.
Yes. So Dan, if you want to give us a little bit of your background, how you ended up at Crown Castle, and just jump on in.
Yeah, so I have a legal background. I started off working as an attorney for Crown Castle in 2012 when Crown Castle made an acquisition of a small cell company called NextG Networks. And I was working in that capacity for about 3 years. And then about 3 years ago, so I've been with the company just over 6 years, 3 years ago, this position was available as the Director of Government Relations for the Western region. And so I've been with Crown for 6 years, and I've been working in the utility space for about the last 10.
Wow, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
How do you like that?
I love it. It's the best job in the world. Work for a great company. We've got a tremendously talented staff and team, and the work we're doing is to me inspiring and challenging. But I really believe in what we're doing, and I think it's really been a fantastic run.
Yeah. So how was that transition from legal into this role?
So this is a unique position. It's almost a hybrid position. So the skills were critical and transferable. I tell people, because I don't practice law, I'm not actually a lawyer, so it's everything I love about the law and nothing I hate.
Oh,
so
cool.
For me, it's kind of the best position you could imagine. I'm not necessarily poring over 40-page agreements and spending hours and hours doing that, although I once did. Now it's more about collaborating, coming up with a plan, working with people toward an end solution.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you. So Scott, how did you get involved with Crown Castle?
I've been in the wireless industry for about 20 years.
Okay.
And so throughout that career, I amassed a lot of different skills. The industry has some pretty specific areas that you can jump into it. And so I was acquiring real estate for the wireless carriers for a while through leases. It's called a site acquisition manager. So I did that for a number of years, working for carriers, working for contractors, and then most recently started working with Crown Castle about 4 years ago, and came in as on a kind of a government role, and then transitioned over into government relations on Dan's team here. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what real estate is for wireless? That's
Sure.
an interesting.
Yeah. We're actually on the stock market. We're listed as a REIT, a real estate trust.
Okay.
And so carriers will lease land to put their sites on.
Okay.
The normal kind of tower sites, and we'll talk about that later. But and so we lease that property on behalf of the carriers. Sometimes the carriers will lease the property, and then they'll sell those leases to a tower company, an infrastructure company like ours.
Interesting.
So it's really a real estate company in that sense. You can think of commercial real estate in the same way. They build up buildings and they lease out those spaces. We do a similar type of role for the carriers.
Interesting. Okay. So just wrapping my head around this, visually speaking, so we see a tower of sorts, and so you lease that tower out to the different carriers. So
that's one aspect of our company. Yep.
Right. So when people say, "Oh, the tower for my company is down," it's probably down for a lot of companies then.
Could be.
Yes.
It could be. Yeah, there's a lot of different reasons why it might go down, but there are cell site towers are what they're thinking of when they say my tower's down, or there's a tower nearby. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So now real estate, then are you subject to those federal real estate laws when it comes to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Interesting.
And if I could, it's just sort of an evolution of the business. In when this first kicked off, the carriers were building the towers for themselves. And over the last 20 years or so, there's been an evolution. Crown celebrates its 20th year as a publicly traded company in August, and there was a recognition that if we can share the asset between the carriers, then it's going to recognize an economic benefit for everybody. Mm-hmm. So companies like Crown Castle, who've amassed a portfolio of 40,000 towers, all with multiple tenants on the tower, it shares the economics. So our company is really built on the idea of a shared infrastructure model, whether it's the towers, the small cell networks, or the fiber optic cabling.
Right. So, well, and I would imagine in the long run that's better for everybody, right? You're looking at more business across the board.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It also keeps the number of towers minimized to the extent not everybody loves the idea of having hundreds of thousands of towers across the country. If you can put more than one customer or more than one carrier on a tower, it's going to minimize the number of towers necessary to, so that they can get their coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about Crown Castle and what they're all about.
Yeah,
you want to take that for
sure.
me?
Yeah, Dan.
And I kind of started it. So Crown Castle, at its heart, is a shared infrastructure provider. It's the nation's largest provider of the wireless infrastructure. It's a publicly traded company. Currently, we're stewarding about $60 billion of investor capital, to execute on our business. And we have three big lines of business. We have the towers, which people are likely familiar with. We've got small cells, which people may not be, and that's what we're here to talk about primarily today. And then we have fiber optic cabling, which kind of connects everything. The fiber optic cabling does all the heavy lifting.
Okay.
And so this 40,000 tower portfolio that we've acquired or built over the last 20 or so years continues to be the backbone of the wireless network. They carry tremendous amount of traffic. They're powerful. They reach a long ways. They handle a lot of coverage and capacity. Increasingly, over the last 5 years, through acquisition and organic effort, Crown is also the largest provider of small cells in the country.
Okay.
And what a small cell is, a lot like the name implies, it's a much smaller form factor, smaller powered. They're designed to go within the public right-of-way, and they're designed primarily to attach to existing infrastructure. So if you see a wooden utility pole, a city street light, or any other infrastructure that's already in the right-of-way, small cells are ideal because we can attach the antenna and equipment directly to that. Again, keeping the proliferation of the sites minimized to the extent we can, but still providing the service.
Okay.
And then, as I indicated, the fiber optic cabling is what moves all of that traffic. The signal comes into the antennas, processed, and moved through the system through a fiber optic cabling. Currently, Crown Castle has 60,000 route miles of fiber in the dense markets that we need, and that's what connects the towers, it connects the small cells, and increasingly we're seeing that it's also connecting businesses through what we called enterprise or lit fiber.
Okay.
And because the data demands are so high, not just wireless, it's not uncommon for large companies or hospitals or schools to want a dedicated fiber circuit going into their place of business because they're transferring so much data. So Crown Castle can also provide that service, and we call that a lit circuit.
Interesting. All right. Thank you. And I want to apologize. I called it Soft Cell when we first started, and that is the name of the band.
Yes.
So
I started singing Tainted Love in my mind.
I did too. After a minute. I'm sorry about that.
In fact, I kind of wish
Tainted
they were
Love,
called
that's the song.
Soft
Yeah.
Cells.
You know what? Maybe we'll just lay that over this podcast.
No Tainted Love here.
We might change the name.
So super interesting, right? I know that a lot of people, again, we've mentioned, they're very familiar with the towers. A lot of people are pretty familiar with the fiber optic cables at this point, but the small cells are they relatively new? I guess I should ask. I would assume in your field they're not, but I hadn't heard of them until I met Scott a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. I would say that it's the newer form of the technology right now. We've been deploying small cells for years and years.
Yeah.
In the right of way, but recently, in the last 2 to 3, maybe 4 years, the carriers have really seen an uptick in the need for data traffic. So the introduction of the iPhone changed the landscape of the way people use their devices.
Okay.
And so the carriers have a network that's made primarily for, this is the macro sites that we were talking about, the bigger towers that everybody's familiar with. Those carry traffic for voice. They carry a minimal amount of data traffic, and they can't handle the kind of data demand that the consumers need right now. So the iPhone sort of changed the landscape, and now the carriers are needing to get that signal closer to the end user, and also increase the capacity of that signal so that the end consumer, can experience something like seamless video or FaceTiming or things like this that are really important. And then all of the future applications of that are really what the carriers are building out for now as well. So it's relatively new, but not completely new. It's just the volume of small cells is going way up.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. And primarily, it's for data, as Scott had suggested. So we're seeing mobile demand for data double every 2 years, the hockey stick of demand. We're seeing a network with the macro sites that was built to serve the 2G voice network, and we're seeing increased demand for data. And so the small cells are going to have to be deployed by the hundreds of thousands to satisfy the growing demand for data. Currently in the country, there's more devices on the network than there are people in the United States, and that number is going to grow. And when we talk about 5G in the future and what we think it holds, that number of devices demanding data from the network is going to grow exponentially.
Yeah.
And so we're, in some ways, we've been doing it ourselves for 10 years, but as far as the concept of wireless infrastructure, it is new-ish, but it's incredibly necessary, and it's going to be absolutely explosive.
Wow. I'm really excited to see where this goes. So obviously you mentioned it's for data. What other applications is this used for?
Yeah, something that we'll end up talking about probably a few times throughout the interview here is public safety is needing to have better capability, better communications capability. And so small cell networks really help public safety in a lot of different ways. So that's another application. And we can talk about connected vehicles. We can talk about business-to-business type applications. There's a lot of new applications that'll be riding on these networks. That isn't just me surfing the net.
Exactly.
There's a lot of other stuff going on, which is why billions and millions of dollars are being spent on creating these new networks in the right of way.
Well, and with this public safety, I would imagine you probably, to circle back to the economic development theme that we've got going on, I would imagine that you have to talk to a lot of communities, right, and a lot of government entities within this. Which government relations, right? There's a need for it. Do you want to touch a little bit on what those relationships look like?
And so our approach to this is one of collaboration. So there are certain legal rights that guide our deployments under federal and state law, and it's important that both sides understand that. But we think our competitive advantage in this space is the fact that we're willing to actually collaborate with local governments and come as close to a win-win solution as possible. Not everybody's going to want a small cell at every street corner. We understand that. However, if you're voting with your phone, we definitely need one at every corner. But so what we do is we establish relationships. We're in the communities that we serve, and that's important to note. We discussed that earlier. Is that Scott is living in Denver and working in Denver. We've got more than 60 offices across the country, but we have folks that are on the ground living and working in the communities that we're deploying. So that's important to us. We get to know we work with the city staff, the city managers, the city attorneys, and then on the elected side, we can tell a nice story and help them. Tell a story that's compelling about why they have an interest in having robust and ubiquitous wireless coverage. Scott touched on it. I think we're up to 80% of E911 calls are made from a wireless device. So imagine that if you had some sort of emergency and you're unable to get a usable signal on your phone, there's a real public safety aspect. And there was something that I was in a meeting with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office not too long ago, talking about technology and future state. And when one of their deputies, the vision here is their deputy draws their gun, their operations centers notified that because of the sensors on the weapon, where the body telemetry, heartbeat, blood pressure, foot speed, communications, everything is enabled through the wireless network. They know where their deputy's at in real time and can monitor his or her health. And that's just one of the applications. There are thousands of applications that are known to us now that need the wireless network. There's an untold number in the future. It's one of those things where technology is going to beget technology. So when we have the wireless, streamless, ubiquitous coverage, the benefits and the number of devices is going to go through the roof.
That's insane. I actually had no idea that they censored each of their police.
And here's another example: is that if you take an average user of an iPhone or any smartphone, they're using a gig a month or some nominal amount of data, and then autonomous vehicles could be using a gig a minute. And so you can understand the demands are exponential. The amount of information that has to flow in real time is absolutely exponential. And small cells are critical with the fiber optic cabling and the macro side to enable that.
Can we talk pricing? Is that something I can ask about how much one small cell would cost?
Yeah, I mean, that is all over the map. But
the short answer is we don't know, and we would probably
we want to know better.
Our partners that actually have to pay for these. It's all over. They're certainly less expensive to build than towers.
Yeah.
From a pure pricing model perspective, it might be more efficient to build a single tower than to build, let's say, 50 nodes that are providing a similar service, or even 5 or 6 nodes. But it's location. I mean, that's what's so vital, is to spread the signal out to an usable level. You can't park a macro site, a large tower 2 miles from town, like you could in the old days, and have it serve all the needs that people are demanding today. You simply can't do it. And so what these small cells do is they distribute that network capabilities closer to the user. Just like in your home office, you probably have a Wi-Fi router.
Right.
It's probably not that usable at your neighbor's house, or even in your bedroom.
Yeah.
It's less usable.
Well, I would disagree. I steal my neighbor's Wi-Fi all the time.
Perfect.
There you go. Yeah, theirs is more powerful.
Yes, I'm just kidding. It's
in case they call in.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, I didn't mean to throw you off guard with the pricing question, but I'm sure that's part of city planning, right? In these, developments.
Just in general, it's a big investment that the carriers are making in the community, and.
Right.
You can imagine when we're talking about building out things on a utility scale, when we envision building one tower, like Dan was saying earlier, that tower is a finite piece of infrastructure that can be built and used, and you can look at exactly how that structure affects the network. And then when you build a small cell network, you're building multiple locations, multiple nodes along the fiber. And it's a big, huge investment in the future for the community. So there's an economic development piece to it because it drives business. It brings people in. And pretty soon, probably in the next year or two, companies will look at locations to put offices in based on what kind of wireless infrastructure and what kind of backhaul capabilities are there. Backhaul is how data rides along that fiber. So it's so the pricing it's a huge investment.
Absolutely. I would imagine, but in the long run, it's going to pay for itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They wouldn't build it if it would.
Exactly. Well, yeah, it's like cars, right? They make them cheaper now.
Yeah.
So you buy more.
Right.
But different with technology because we need it to last for a really long time.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would say it's safe to say small cells is not a cheaper alternative to towers. It's a necessary ingredient of the heterogeneous network to serve as many devices and people as we can, and it's one component, but it's certainly not a cheaper alternative. In fact, it's not an alternative. You shouldn't expect towers to go away.
Yeah.
They're going to complement one another, and the demands, as I indicated earlier, are just driving the continued investment.
Okay, so we will expect to see both.
Yes.
Continually. Is there any chance in the future? I mean, obviously we can't foresee too much. That one or the other will go away, or something different will come along.
The networks that are there now, like I said, there was a huge investment to build the network. So the network itself it's gonna stay. The technology it's a line of sight technology, so there always has to be some vertical aspect of the network so that the signal can reach the end user, can reach the intended party. So they won't go away. The technologies may change, the antennas may change, the sizes may change in the future. Sometimes it'll get bigger, sometimes smaller, but the network will stay and it'll just continue to grow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about the difference between small cells in a large city like Denver versus a smaller city, say Durango? Is there a different infrastructure on how you would go about on building tower versus small cell?
Yeah, you want to?
Sure. So small cells can serve either function, which is to add coverage where there currently isn't, or to offload already taxed networks in urban settings for data purposes. So you can go into an area that doesn't have any or little coverage and create a network that serves both capacity. In Denver, you're likely going to get 4 bars most places you go. Can you upload and download data at the speed that you need it? that's maybe not. And so what we call is densification in these large environments where there's already an existing network through macro and other applications, but they're looking to densify their networks to get more small cells to offload the data traffic. So where you see small cells, you can expect to see, or where you see people, you can expect to see small cells. The more people, the more small cells.
Okay.
And Scott had a good example. We were talking about the World Ski Championships in Vail. If you could kind of, that illustrates that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you get a big group of people all amassing in one spot, there's going to be a huge data demand, especially in an event like that, like a ski event where you have thousands of people, maybe even tens of thousands of people all coming in, and they're all wanting to video and stream and then send that out. It's a big demand on the network, and so we partnered with Vail and came up with a really great solution for that really small town that doesn't see a lot of traffic normally, but at a larger event they end up needing it. And so we partnered with them, and within 10 months we had a new network built and operating, and it was a huge success.
Wow.
So. Yeah, and the good news is even when that event is over, the community still left with all these lingering benefits of a robust network. So that network that we've built in Vail today will serve the needs of the community today and hopefully in the future. But a lot of those seminal events, Super Bowls, the papal visit in Philadelphia, there was 1 million people in a 10-square block radius, and everybody wanted to tweet a picture or video of the Pope. And that's only possible through robust wireless and small cell technology.
Right. That's absolutely fascinating. I love that. And speaking of that, so one of the bigger events we have in Colorado is the X Games, right, in Aspen. So were you part of that at all? Were you able to be out there?
So we have towers
Yes.
in Aspen right now. So there are, that's the one aspect of our company where throughout the years we've amassed a number of towers. And so there are towers that we own in the Aspen area.
Yeah.
Right now we don't have a small cell build going on in Aspen, but yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for wireless coverage, better wireless coverage up in Aspen.
Is that in the works maybe? Are we trying to talk to Aspen?
Every carrier wants new towers in Aspen. That they see the need, they understand what's out there. There's an airport. There's gazillions of people that show up constantly there for skiing, for summer events. So it's a known hotspot for wireless coverage, and every carrier wants to have better coverage out there.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to mention about small cells, in addition to having the amount of people as a consideration, is topography is challenging. Scott indicated these are line of sight, so when you get any terrain in Colorado, mountainous, you're going to need more devices that are serving the need and have line of sight with one another.
Yeah.
So that's small cells an ideal application for hard to serve areas that have topography or topographical challenges.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So in the last minute and a half here, I'm going to give you a hardball, but do you have issues with people that want to keep their city looking the way it is, especially because we have the beautiful mountains in Aspen?
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you kind of ease into that? Like, yes, it's beautiful here, but you still have people that need coverage.
Right. Yeah, definitely. There's a balance there. We're always working with a city government to come up with the best solution that works. So in a lot of cases, we have collected a set of standards with a jurisdiction where the site, the small cell, has to look a certain way or else we're not allowed to build it. And in other areas where line of sight is not such an issue, or the view shed isn't such an issue as it might be in Aspen or Vail, we would deploy a different type of infrastructure. So we try to partner with our jurisdiction partners. We want to make sure that everybody is happy with what's being built. Sometimes that doesn't happen. There's controversy out there, but in most cases we're able to connect with the government entities and come up with a solution that looks as good as it can for the area and provides the right kind of service that everybody demands.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We will be right back. Hang on with us and check out this podcast and more at cobrt.com/live. Be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer. Today and all week, we'll be talking economic development. But as I said earlier, we took a little bit of a different turn here. We're talking small cells, not soft cell, the band. And we're talking towers, and we're talking, technology, really, I should say, with Crown Castle here, and which is a huge part of economic development, if we're being honest. And it is a part of the utilities that we expect these days. You've got your water and you've got your electricity. Now we really expect to have good cell service anywhere we go. We need the Wi-Fi and all those fun things that we like. But taking a turn from the fun, we touched a little bit on this public safety in the last segment, but I'd like to expand a little bit more on that and really, underline for our audience how much small cells and towers and fiber optic play a role in the safety and public safety. So who wants to start on that?
Yeah, I'll just say really quickly that public safety emergency services personnel are under a tremendous amount of pressure to perform and get it right. And so a lot of times they'll need to use every piece of technology that's out there and available for them. And if you're at a call and you need to make some choices, you might need to use your personal phone. And so if your personal phone is riding on a network that's way overloaded because everybody else is using it, then you have a problem. And so we want to make sure that when emergency personnel are at a call, they're able to use all of the technology that's available. And that means using their personal phone, whether it's on a T-Mobile network or Verizon or Sprint. That's a huge issue that we're trying to alleviate, that the carriers are trying to alleviate with the small cell networks. So.
Yeah, I mean, another example that's even just close to home. How many parents rely on being able to text their kids at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night and, when are you going to be home? Are you okay? Everything good?
Right, it's 10 p.m. Where are your kids?
Where are you?
Yeah.
Well, now you know because you can text them.
Exactly.
Or you just have them on GPS.
That was what I was going to say.
Or even something like Uber, the ability to get transported safely.
Yeah.
You need a reliable signal. So there's just so many examples, that we every day we've become really used to and accustomed to having that service.
Yeah. Absolutely. So do we want to touch a little bit on where Denver is? Denver's plans. So I know that you are definitely our Denver guy here.
Denver is, well, let's talk about Colorado in general. We have a number of contracts in place that we're performing on for the Denver area. And so some of those contracts are for small cells, some are for towers. I'll just point out the small cell piece. So we have about 900 new sites going in the greater Colorado area. Most of those are where you would expect them to be, right around the Denver metro area and some of the cities that surround us, Aurora and then in the north in North Glen and Thornton and some of those areas. And so that network is currently being built. Some of it is in progress and under construction, and some of it is still in that permitting phase. But we're getting closer and closer to constructing all of those sites in the next 10 to 12 to 15 months.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
So this means 5G, correct?
Yes.
Is that what that means?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be everything.
Okay.
So 5G is a term that's used. It's an ill-defined term, but it's a term nonetheless that people understand and hear.
Yeah.
So 5G is what the technology that we're building for right now. Do you want to touch on 5G?
Yeah. To Scott's point, I'm not sure there's an agreed upon protocol for what 5G is. What we know is the throughputs are going to be exponentially faster than 4G.
Okay.
And to steal a line from one of the CEOs of Sprint or T-Mobile, he'd said that think of 4G to 5G as black and white to color television. So it's going to be that evolutionary leap.
Wow.
And so when we get the sites deployed in Denver, does that mean that 5G is enabled? Not really. There's some things that need to happen and some standards and protocols that need to be agreed upon, but we're definitely building toward that, no question.
Okay, so let me ask you this. When we think of 4G, from 3G to 4G, right, I didn't really notice much of a difference personally. I mean, obviously everything was faster, right? I was able to download faster. I didn't have, the buffering as much. But so is that determined by these towers, or is that determined by these the cellular companies?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
So the infrastructure, the towers, need to be closer to the end user. So if we put a small cell in the right of way and it's close to where you live, you're going to experience a better signal on your
Okay.
phone. And so I would think in the future your phone would have a 5G indicator of some
Right.
kind, right?
Yeah.
Like we do for 4G or 3G. And so when your 5G is on and you have 4 bars or 5 bars or 20 bars, whatever they come up with, you're going to end up having a better experience.
Okay.
Whatever it is that you're using it for, you probably would notice something a little different. Where it really comes into play is when you have like a connected vehicle
Yeah.
that's connected to that network. The data, the amount of data that's going back and forth with that small cell network is going to have, it's going to need a lot more. It's going to need a lot more throughput, like Dan mentioned, to be able to drive safely and to be able to connect from cell to cell along that fiber line.
Okay.
So
yeah.
consider if the carrier were like a Lamborghini. You know, you're not going to expect to go. It's capable of 200 miles an hour, but not on a single country road with potholes and dirt. Right. So here comes Crown and others to build, the information superhighway, wide lanes. That's what the infrastructure providers make the pipe bigger.
Okay. But also don't go 200 miles per hour in a Lamborghini anyway,
Yeah.
for safety purposes. I do have to let our,
That's a
our
bad
radio
idea.
audience know that.
Especially while texting.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
So you mentioned T-Mobile and Sprint talking about this. There's something interesting that just happened, right? They're merging. That's something exciting that we're learning about. So what does this mean when a merger happens on your end?
Well, so the answer is, we think we could capitalize on it and see it as an opportunity. So there's a couple things. First of all, they've announced the terms of the merger. There are some things that have to happen from a regulatory standpoint that could take some number of months. So what the final product or what the outcome of the merger will be is still unknown. I think where Crown feels is that we're uniquely positioned is that we have relationships. In fact, they're at an all-time high with both T-Mobile and Sprint. We've just recently executed long-term contracts. We're deploying a tremendous amount of small cells for T-Mobile and would like to do so for Sprint. So from that perspective, the relationship is good. And the other is that because Crown has invested in both towers, small cells, and fiber, we have a unique set of assets to market to our carriers to take care of their needs. So while some may see it as potential headwinds for towers, others we're seeing it as an opportunity and to capitalize on that opportunity. And lastly is that we have now customers that we didn't have 5 years ago. We have customers, and we will have customers in 10 years that aren't known to us now. There are so many people that are trying to access this ability to transfer information quickly. You may see large content providers that get into this space. We're talking with other large companies that have needs to access our 40,000 unique pieces of real estate across the country for their purpose, whether it be edge computing, whether it be the need to have a dedicated circuit of fiber optic cable into their place of business or bank or school. So, from our diverse customer and asset base, I think we feel pretty positive about it.
Oh, nice. Good. Well, and I know that one of the things that we were looking at in Denver was building more T-Mobile towers, right? That's one of the few carriers, I believe, that Denver maybe wasn't supporting it as much as the other. So
Sure. Yeah.
Is
T-Mobile
there-
is making a huge investment in Denver because we're growing, and Denver is one of the fastest growing communities in America, right? And
woo woo.
yeah,
Very
it's good.
excited.
It's a call out for us.
Yeah.
But that also means that we get noticed by the bigger companies. So where 10 years ago, T-Mobile might have skipped over a city like Denver, now they're making a huge investment. I think it says a lot for just how important this city is to the
absolutely.
carriers, and other carriers are doing the same. Verizon has a investment that they're doing right now, and Sprint is also making some investments. So it's moving very well, and AT&T as well. So and as you can probably guess, we're really connected to all of those carriers because those are our customers, and so they are making huge strides in Denver. Yeah,
and it's important to note as well that Crown Castle is not a general contractor to the carriers. So we bring our own capital to the equation. We build the networks, and we own and operate them, and we want to be the last owners, and we want to get many more customers on the network, not just the carriers.
Okay.
And so it's not just the carriers, although they're making enormous investment. To Scott's point, Crown is able to bring its own capital, which goes into the model we talked about where everybody kind of wins.
Right.
We're doing it and leasing the space back to them cheaper than they could do it themselves.
What's an example of a network that you would have on that's not a carrier?
Like a customer?
Yes, yeah. Sorry.
Well, we had talked about these enterprise customers. For example, we have a large, we call it K through 12. We connect schools. We connect and to have their dedicated fiber network for the amount of data that they need to transmit. And there's government programs that help the schools pay for the services. And so, we have a big footprint in connecting schools, banks, hospitals, large office buildings that each tenant may want a dedicated circuit if they're moving data. We can help them all.
How fun. So I think that's delightful, right? You're helping these schools get on their hospitals and things like that. So you mentioned that you have 60 offices throughout the country, and so you are in your cities that you're providing these services to. And so one of the things I think a lot of people worry about when a big company comes into their city is, okay, what are they going to do? They're just going to trash it and leave, right? Is there anything that you guys are doing to get back to these communities? Obviously, you're working with schools and government officials, and I'm sure that you work out some budgets to make that win-win for everybody. But is there anything else that you're doing to give back to these communities?
Yeah, and Dan mentioned it earlier. We're going to be the last owner of these facilities. So where a lot of companies will come in and build, and they're planning on leaving that network there or selling it or something like that, that company will end up leaving and not being a part of the community. We have our office here in Denver, and so it's important for us to be in a great relationship and a partnership with all of the communities that we're building in and developing in.
Yeah.
And we are one of the groups here in town is called the Colorado Wireless Association, and it's just a way for the industry to connect and get together. And we're holding an event on the 17th called Blessings in a Backpack.
Okay.
And we're going to be filling up backpacks and then taking those backpacks over to the rescue mission and handing those out to some of the kids there. And so there are ways that the wireless industry really wants to give back, and that's just one example of many that go on. A lot of our golf events or other events that we hold are always focused on some local charity to help out. So, and then as a company, Crown Castle has a program called Connected for Good, and I'll let Dan kind of talk about what we do there.
So it's a national program. It's called Connected by Good. This is our second year. I believe the number's around 20 markets that Crown Castle is actually going to go in. Our employees are going to go in for the day and basically leave the park in better shape than we found it. And I did it last year, and it was a ton of fun. We did, and I'm based out of Southern California, so we went to a park in Orange County, California, and there's a municipal orange grove where the city owns the orange grove. They harvest the oranges and donate it to charity, and we went in and completely cleaned up this orange grove, trimmed it, spent hours really making the park really look great.
Yeah.
And we want to connect to the communities of Scotts Point, because our kids play in those parks, and his kids, are in these school systems, and so we have definitely an interest in making the communities good.
Yeah. I want to ask a little bit about this Blessings in a Backpack. You said that's May 17th.
Yep.
Are you looking for volunteers, or are you guys set?
Sure. Yeah. If you go to the Colorado Wireless Association's website, you can just click that link and volunteer.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. I love that you can get the community involved and giving back to
absolutely.
the community.
You don't have to be in the wireless industry.
Yeah.
This is something we're all devoted to.
Yeah. And so we've mentioned this obviously several times, your involvement in the community. Tell me about these municipal leagues that you've got.
Sure. Yeah. So in Colorado here, we have the Colorado Municipal League. And so it's a collection of municipalities, jurisdictions, who get together and just talk about what's going on in their cities. What are the issues that they're working on? What are they dealing with? There's another one in Utah. And so they have events periodically throughout the year.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And we're involved with those because the municipalities, my title is government relations, so I want to be at these events and really connecting with folks that I wouldn't normally be able to connect with, in their offices. People are busy, and so when you go to an event in Vail or Aspen, or Breckenridge. They always hold them in nice, beautiful spots. You can just have a much more casual atmosphere to sit down and just chat about what their needs are and how we can be a better partner. What can we do that's better?
Yeah. Any success stories from that?
Oh yeah. Every time I attend one of those, I end up having a conversation that leads to us, changing a plan and coming up with a better solution for a city, or just a new relationship where they say, "Hey, I didn't even know about you guys. Can you help us out?" And we're able to come to an agreement, some kind of legal agreement that gives us access rights to the right of way, and we can build a network there.
And there's benefits from a larger perspective as well.
Yeah.
The leagues around the country, and every state that we operate in within with appreciable volume, we're active in the league. They influence state legislators. There's a lot of legislation going on right now in small cells. I don't know if you're at all familiar with it.
Nope. I might as well be honest.
It's really exciting to us.
Yeah.
We're kind of like wireless geeks. But so since 2016, there's been 20 states that have passed some form of small cell legislation that's intended to streamline the process of permitting small cells.
Okay.
Currently, there's 4 states where we don't know the outcome of this legislative session. In the West, within the last 2 years, there's been legislation passed that's favorable to streamlines the process in Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. Right now, we've got California and Hawaii as pending in this legislative session. We'll see what happens. But the leagues are incredibly influential to the legislators. So if we can establish a relationship with the league, they understand what small cells are and how that benefits their community, then they can provide a positive voice or maybe just a neutral one, because frankly, our interests aren't always in line with the league's interests. A lot of leagues really want local control. They want to dictate every aspect of the wireless deployment. And to understand where we are now and where we need to get to, which is more than 1 million small cells on air in the next 10 years, we're going to need some regulatory framework,
right,
starting from the feds down to the states, down to locals, that we have an agreed upon size or form factor or process that allows us to deploy these at scale.
Okay.
You can't have every deployment be a fist fight over 5 or 10 sites.
Right.
We need to deploy 5 to 10,000, in the same location, and to do so, we need a regulatory framework. It's the same as building out the roads, the railways, a connected landline system. It's just the next evolution of that. Mm-hmm. So we think that our relationship with leagues are definitely beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely.
What in an ideal world, what do these regulations look like for you?
I've dreamed about that so long.
Have you? It's an interesting dream to have.
We think about it at night. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You aren't dreaming about tainted love.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, ideally, state legislation will create an environment where we can build at that utility scale. Dan just mentioned it, thousands versus tens in a city.
Yeah.
And so thinking about the future, we need a lot more of these facilities, but we also want to maintain a partnership with the local jurisdictions. So state legislation like the one in Colorado here and the one that was just passed in Utah give us a broader approach to be able to build the network at a larger, faster scale.
Okay.
Or larger scale at a quicker pace. Yeah.
So consider that the municipality has already considered a size they find acceptable.
Right.
Right. Here's the locations that they want are desirable, and here's maybe what they should look like. We walk into the permitting agency at the Public Works counter. We have X number of permits. We submit the drawings, all the things that are required for a safety perspective. Pull an encroachment or building permit so the city can inspect the work. And then we get our permits in a timely fashion. We'd like to be treated the same as Xcel Energy.
Okay.
If Xcel Energy needs to put a transformer on a pole, they know their network, they're the experts, and the cities aren't going to stop them from putting a transformer on a pole.
Right.
But whatever process the local electric provider has, we would like the same process.
Okay.
It's going to be important to get to where we need to go.
Absolutely.
Right.
So let me ask you this. Obviously, as I said, we know that small cell isn't new, but it's making its way into more people like myself are starting to understand what this is, to put it in the best way that I can. Do you run into that issue with these government officials, right? I would imagine that you do. And with growing technology, government officials don't have engineer degrees. They aren't, well versed in wireless all the time. Lots of people do their research and some geek out over these things, right? As you mentioned, bit of a wireless nerd, right?
Yeah.
So how do you combat that? Because a lot of people don't like change. If I don't know about it, I don't want it in my city.
Right.
Do you have process that you go through?
I think I would say relationship is the key there in education. So a lot of times it's an unknown. They hear of one story that's bad, and so they assume that it's going to look the same, act the same, be the same for them in their district, right? If it's a city council person. My goal is to just help educate and help them understand what we're planning on doing, as our company is separate from some other companies, but what is our plan? What is it going to look like? I'm here to answer questions. Here are the resources for your constituents to look at if they have questions. They can call me. I really want them to understand that they're not going at it alone. They don't need to deal with the angry constituent by themselves. It's something that we can come alongside and help out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we've done the research, and the more people know about small cells, the more positive they view them.
Yeah.
When they don't know about it, people fear change, or they think that it's going to be some unsightly macro site that's going to impede their view. The more they know about it, I think the more positive they become. We've pretty much, with the fringe exception, we've pretty much have all agreed that we want to communicate through wireless means, and this is a necessary ingredient to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I meet with municipalities and all the way from staff to city council, everybody says, yes, we need it. It's never a keep this wireless service out. I think everybody understands that the folks that are working, living, and playing in their community need the wireless coverage, and so they all want it. They all understand the need for it, but they're really hungry to have a say in the way that it looks and the way that it feels in their community, and so that's what we want to provide a pathway for them.
And it also underscores the need for some regulatory reform. If you go into any community, chances are they haven't updated their wireless ordinance since 1996. And that's when the last big federal legislation, the Telecommunications Act. So we come in with we want to put in some small cells. And they say, great, here's our wireless code that's, 22 years out of date.
Yep.
We're going to put you through a process as though you were building a 200-foot tower.
Yeah.
And no, we don't understand. We're just trying to attach a shoebox-sized piece of equipment to an existing pole. Well, here's the process, right? And then you wind up with a prolonged process, public hearing, right? Discretion.
Yep.
People get sort of whipped into. There's a lot of emotion that comes into it. When in the end, it's smaller than a transformer that you'd find on an XL pole. So with the regulatory reform that's coming through the state legislation, cities are forced to update their ordinances to put them more in step with the modern wireless communication technology, which is small cells.
Wow. Well, I, for one, am ready for Denver to be set with these 900 small cells. Is that the goal?
Yeah, throughout Colorado.
Throughout Colorado.
Denver, we're probably looking at 500 units.
Perfect. Yeah. I'll take those 500. Yeah. I won't have to steal Wi-Fi from my neighbors anymore, probably.
Perfect.
And people can take action. Here's the nexus that people don't get. If you don't like your coverage, call your council member.
Okay.
If people call the carrier, they complain to their neighbors, call your council member. Demand better coverage in your community. Ask what they're doing to accommodate better wireless coverage. And ask them, are you planning on allowing small cells into the community? I mean, that's the next phase in getting interest in reform is to call the people that represent you and demand better wireless coverage, just like you would if your streets had potholes or if you had other issues in your community. If you don't have good wireless coverage, talk to your representatives, your electeds, and your neighbors, and really start to build the momentum behind it.
Thank you so much for that advice, and thank you both for being here. It's been a pleasure having you on. And for this and more, cobrt.com/radio-podcast, and be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a great day.
Thanks very much.